This is the second section of the SY2 exam, and we can see that the instruction is that you choose one question. So the important thing here to remember is that you only need to do the mass media section, so don't even bother reading through the education and the religion sections. That would be a waste of your precious time. But within the mass media section, you've got to do both parts, both the 20 marker and the 40 marker. And again, I would be thinking about time management. So I should be turning over to this section of the paper after about half an hour, and I need to spend 20 minutes on the 20 marker, 40 minutes on the 40 marker. That's 1 hour in total. And for these questions, I would be thinking that before I start writing, I obviously need to read through the questions carefully and more than once to make sure that I'm really aware of what the question is asking me to do. And then I also need to do a brief plan. And in that brief plan, I need to be thinking about the sociological knowledge that I could display within my answers. So I need to be identifying key concepts, key theories, key studies and examples that I can use within my answers. For the 20 mark question, what I need to provide is both depth and range. So it's asking me to describe and explain the characteristics of moral panics, and I know with this question that what I need to be thinking is ideally I should be making at least 4 points, and each of those points that I identify needs a full explanation and needs to be linked to relevant evidence and examples. So paragraph structure, I would be thinking, is crucial here. Identify a point, explain it in a way that demonstrates understanding, and then use some supporting evidence and examples. Now, the key concept here is moral panics. So this question will tend to use a key word from the specification. So you must look at the specification carefully and make sure that you understand all of the key words. And in my answer, I'm going to need to define what is meant by moral panics and then identify and explain 4 features of moral panics with reference to examples. So for example, I might be talking about the way in which moral panics involve the identification of folk devils, groups that are demonized during a moral panic. I might be talking about the way in which the media uses symbolic shorthands to describe these moral panics. For example, references to the clothes that they wear, or in the case of modern rockers, the motorbikes and the scooters. I might be talking about the way in which moral panics can create more deviance, can create a process of deviancy amplification by glamorizing a particular activity or group. I might be talking about the pressure on authorities like the police and the government to clamp down on folk devils during moral panics. And obviously the key work here is Stanley Cohen's work, because he coined the term moral panic. The last question on the paper is the 40 marker. So this is a long essay question, and this is worth just under half of the marks. Remember that there are 90 marks. So how you answer this question is crucial, and time management is crucial. You must spend 40 minutes on this question, but before you start writing, read every word in the question a couple of times at least, and do a plan. And one of the things that I would be thinking when I look at the 40 mark question initially, when I read through the question, is what type of essay is this? Remember that there are 3 types of essay questions that they could set. Questions that ask you to evaluate a claim, questions that ask you to evaluate one particular theory, and questions that ask you to evaluate sociological explanations, a range of theories and explanations. And that's what this question is. All longer essays, remember, need an introduction and a conclusion, so I'd be thinking about the importance of doing that. And I'd be thinking that with the 40-mark question, the key command word is going to be a word that signals the importance of doing evaluation. So the command words are likely to be discuss, assess, or evaluate. And all of these command words, such as discuss, really mean that I can't just describe explanations. What I have to do is also analyse their strengths and weaknesses as explicitly as possible. And one way of thinking about the weaknesses and the criticisms of theories and explanations is to think about, what does the theory ignore? What are the underlying assumptions of the theory? How can these be challenged? And what things does the theory perhaps overemphasize? And throughout the main body of my longer essay, I'd be thinking about good paragraph structure. So I'd need to identify the main arguments, I'd need to look at evidence that supports the main arguments of the explanation, but I'd also need to take into account criticisms and weaknesses. Now, when I'm reading essay questions, the thing that I'm always thinking about carefully is what's the underlying debate that lies behind the question. And this question, I think it's fairly clear that this is about the audience effects debate. In other words, is the media's effect on audiences strong or weak? And are audiences passive or active? So with this question, I'm going to need to identify theoretical explanations and examples that are relevant to this particular debate. And of course, that's the work that we've done on perspectives such as the hypodermic syringe model, the cultural effects model, the two-step flow model, the uses and gratifications model, and the decoding model. And cultural effects model, I think, could be linked to the Marxist perspective and the arguments that they make about the effect of ideology on audiences. And I think the uses and gratifications theory that really emphasises the active nature of audiences could be linked to the general approach that we've called pluralism. One final thing to mention is that if I did finish the exam with a few minutes to spare, I wouldn't just sit there. I'd be thinking that I need to go back and check my answers and use every single minute that I have within the exam. Now, don't forget to either watch or re-watch each of the screencasts on exam technique for the SY2 exam. So this one looks at the 10 marker on methods, this one looks at the 20 marker on methods, this is on the 20 marker for mass media, and then this one is on the 40 marker for the mass media. So you've got more detail about each section of the paper, along with examples of real student answers produced under exam conditions that are analysed in each of these screencasts. And finally, if you go on to iLearn and you click on any of the exam skills buttons, you can find access to past questions, you can find access to model answers, keywords and other revision resources.